So we will start today's day. Namaste to all the brothers and sisters. On behalf of the Indian section of the Theosophical Society, I welcome you all for an interactive session on the topic To Those Who Mourn, a booklet by C.W. Leadbeater. Brother Varun Ramakrishnan will be the speaker for the day, and I, Mathurnath, will be the moderator. Along with me is on the IT side is Sister Kritika Goel and Sister Subralina Mohanty. Before we commence the session, let us start with a universal prayer. Please close your eyes, take some deep breaths, center yourself, and silently reflect and also run through the words of the universal invocation. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know they are therefore one with every other. Be still, be aware, let go, and silently run through the words. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know they are therefore one with every other. Observe a silence for a minute. Gently return to your body. Gently return to your body. And we will proceed for the session. So let me introduce you to the speaker of the day, Brother Varun Ramakrishnan. Varun completed his master's in mechanical engineering and has 12 plus years of experience in automotive industry. He was introduced to Theosophy by his family, where his grandparents were initially members. He participated in youth conference organized in Adyar in the year 2018 and 2019. In 2018, under the theme Yoga, he presented on the topic Jnana Yoga. And in 2019, under the theme Meditation and Human Integration, he presented on the topic Scientific Studies and Effects of Practicing Meditation. And for today, he's going to take us on To Those Who Mourn by C.W. Leadbeater. Over to you, Brother Varun. Sister Kritika, give him the spotlight.
Thanks, Mutaji, for the introduction. And again, thanks to everybody for giving this opportunity today to speak on this topic. To those who mourn, as most of you know, this is a pamphlet, an article kind of thing given to us by Charles Leadbeater. It's a wonderful pamphlet, although it's around 15-16 pages, and it covers the basic thing about life after death and what happens in general after death, and covering those aspects. It is given in such a way that even a common man without any background or knowledge, background of the Theosophical Society also can understand how it is, so what is life after death, and what in general are the responsibilities of the close friends or relatives of the person who has passed away. So what one should do, what we should do, or what we should not do, or how it will hamper the growth or development of the person who has left this world, how it impacts their growth. So it talks about a lot of things. It is a very interesting topic. It is one of my it's very interesting, life after death, and it's trying to give us with the scientific background, so that it's not a blind belief. Generally, when we go with our religious beliefs, so for many things you will not get explanations. It is only like fancy, like hell, concept of hell, heaven. There's a lot of fear. Without that, that is because there is no proper understanding. There is no scientific way of understanding the things. So yes, try to give us that aspect so that everybody are clear with what we should be doing, how it impacts, etc. So yeah, without wasting much time, we'll get started. So this article starts off with a question that how can there be relief or hope to a person who has lost his close friend, a relative, or husband, or wife, or whatever it is. So it starts off with that question: how can there be relief or hope to me? So there is, when somebody dies, usually what happens is the talk around that situation is more of, oh, that person who was so close to me, who I was attached to, so much has left me. So what about me? So how do I cope with my future? So how do I lead my life ahead? I was so dependent on you. So I am losing you. So it is more than losing that person. It is more of a fear because we have been dependent on that person so much, emotionally or physically or emotionally, or be it for any matter. So we were dependent on him so much and we have lost him all of a sudden. So we don't know how to go about next, what to do, whom to take as a guidance, etc. So that kind of a fear is there. And there are a lot of things, insecurity, fear, there are a lot of things. It is more of our fear or our insecurity. That is one thing, that is one aspect which makes us sad when somebody close to us loses. That is one aspect. The other aspect is because we are not sure of what next is to the man who has passed away, whether he's going to hell or heaven. We don't know. We don't know that concept. We don't know. We don't have full clarity of that, what happens after death. So that is one more aspect which brings sadness to us. So one is our own fear, our own insecurity. Second is we are not sure of what is happening to that person after he has passed away from his physical body. So these are the two aspects. So he goes on to tell, so your feelings is, so he accepts that. So when a person is questioning that my loss is a fact, so how can you help me unless indeed you give me back my dead? So the questioner is telling my loss is a fact. I have lost a person, that is a fact. But now how can you help me? That is the question he's asking. So he says, I understand your feeling perfectly, yet bear with me for a while and try to grasp three main propositions which I am about to put before you. And first, merely as a broad statement, and then in a convincing detail. So he says, yes, your loss is an apparent fact, there is no doubt. Apparent from your point of view, apparent from a person's point of view. So I want to bring to you another viewpoint. Your point of view is right because you go to any house where there is a death and you can't start controlling him that, okay, there is life after death, this is how it happens. So we cannot go and tell at that point of moment because they're already sad and they're already totally, there is so much of confusion in their mind and so much of sadness. So we cannot go and give this kind of a knowledge at that point of time, right? It's unacceptable. They might think that what this person is telling. I am already sad losing a person, but this person is coming and saying that, okay, so that viewpoint is set. So he's trying to slowly tell that there is another viewpoint. Your viewpoint is perfectly fine. It's acceptable. I know you're under a loss. I know it's difficult for you to cope through. That is one point, but there is another point of view. He tries to slowly start introducing the subject of life after death. So you need to be under no uneasiness or uncertainty with regard to the condition of the loved one, for the life after death is no longer a mystery. The world beyond the grave exists under the same natural laws as this which we know and has been explored and examined with scientific accuracy. So it starts, you start like this. There is a lot of scientific facts, especially nowadays. There are a lot of studies on what is called near-death experience, NDE, and there are a lot of studies on dreams. So what happens on dreams, how the dreams are formed. So why we don't remember some of the dreams very with full clarity, and sometimes how we remember those dreams so clearly. And sometimes when you lose a person who's very, very close to you, after some days, is it clear? My voice is clear.
Yes, Varun, it is.
Yeah. So after some days, we may feel the smell of that person, or we may feel the sound of that person as if he's really speaking, even if the person dies away. And after a few days, or after a few months, a few years, also, I think some of them might have experienced. And there's a lot of scientific evidence now with many people who have undergone this near-death experience. So with all this scientific background, he tries to explain this concept of what is life after death. So he goes on to say, so you must not mourn, for your mourning does harm your loved ones. If you can once open your mind to the truth, you will mourn no more. So don't mourn. It's very easy to say, so don't be sad when somebody dies, but only a person who faced it, who is emotionally and physically or emotionally, it's so attached to that person. When he dies, when they pass away, it's a natural thing. But to what extent there has to be some limit, because it is not only affecting our health at the physical level, but it's also affecting the journey of that person who has passed away. So with this brief background, so he goes on to say that these matters which affect us so nearly and deeply are too important to be left to mere suppositions or vague beliefs. They demand a certainty of scientific investigation and tabulation. So such investigation has been undertaken, such tabulation has been accomplished, and it is the result of this which I wish to put before you. So it is such an important thing to understand death and after life after death, that we should not merely leave these things to blind beliefs based on whatever we have learned through our religious or through our stories of various stories like hell, heaven. So blindly believing that and sticking on to that, and that's not going to lead us anywhere. So with the scientific approach, it says we'll talk about 3 or 4 main things. So it starts off with man is a soul, not a body. So that is the first subtopic that he tells us. So let us consider these propositions one by one, and it takes up this. So it says man is a soul and not a body. So when we understand this correctly, so what happens? So we all know that there is a soul. Some might question where is the soul, but it is all, we have to take it with some belief that there is a soul, because there are so many experiences beyond this body, that almost most religions talk about the soul. So whether we feel it or whether we know where the soul is, so definitely there is a thing that there is a soul. So a man is not a soul. Man is a soul and not a body. So when a man dies, what goes away is the body, but what still remains is the soul. So that aspect should be clear. That fundamental aspect should be clear. At least you should believe that there is a soul, because it is not a blind belief. We have to consider at some point that it is a fact, because almost all religions talks about it. And when we go ahead further in this chapter and see in detail, so we will know that this body is just a temporary coat, a temporary clothing. So beyond this clothing, there is something else, and that is nothing but the soul. So he starts with this. So the body is not a man. It is only the clothing of a man. So what you call death is the laying aside of a worn out garment. And it is no more the end of the man than it is the end of you when you remove your overcoat. So we all wear overcoat and we all remove our overcoat. he just takes the example of overcoat. So when we in the physical body, when we remove the overcoat, it does not mean that we are dead, right? So same. So when so it's just a clothing. So the body is just a clothing. So when the body is not there amongst us, so it does not mean that the man is not there. So that is what he's trying to say. Therefore, you have not lost your friend. You have only lost the sight of the overcoat in which you are accustomed to see him. So how are we? How are we used to see others? So we are used to see others by their body. But inside their body, there is one more clothing. There is one more on the overcoat, there's one more clothing. You may call it a shirt or whatever it may be. So you have we have just lost the overcoat, but inside that overcoat there is one more clothing. But we are used to see man as a body. We are used to recognize the name. We are used to this form and shape of a body. That we feel as soon as that body is not there, we feel that person is not there. So he's telling that is not the case. So before you understand your friend's condition, you must understand your own. So it comes, for a moment, he is telling, okay, let's focus on our own body. Before we talk about a person who has already passed away. So first, before understanding what happens, so first we'll understand ourselves first. So that is where it starts. So try to grasp the fact that you are an immortal being. Immortal because you are divine in essence, because you are the spark of God's own fire, that you lived for ages before you put on this venture that you call a body, and that you will live for ages after it has crumbled into dust. So we all, again, it's a concept of reincarnation. So it's telling that you are born now, but that does not mean that you are not there before. So you have gone through this before. You are wearing this coat on some other body. You have some experiences you left. You have again come here to find some more experience, to learn from few more experience. So it is, so God made man to be an image of his own eternity. So as above, same below. It's the same concept. Yat Pinde Tat Brahmanda, they say. So it is, you have to know that you are a spark of a God. When you understand that you are a spark of a God, so you also understand the person who has lost is also a spark of a God. He has just gone away. It is a temporary. Of course, we have lost his physical body, but he's on a journey to again come back for some other experiences. So when you believe this for yourself, so we automatically believe this for somebody whom we have lost. So that is where it starts. So what you have been thinking of your life is in truth only one day of life as a soul. So what you have been thinking of your life is in truth only one day of your life as a soul. And the same is true for your beloved. Therefore, he is not dead. It is only his body that is cast aside. Yet you must not therefore think of him as mere bodiless death, and in any way less himself that he was before. So then here he slowly brings in the concept of physical body and the spiritual body. So he says that yes, there is something called physical body. He takes the example of Saint Paul, what he said long ago. Saint Paul says there is a natural body and there is a spiritual body. Again, this is slightly with respect to maybe a Christianity background, so that he takes. But when he talks about natural body, he's talking about the physical body. So when he's talking about the spiritual body, he's talking about it's nothing but the emotional or the astral body that we say. So slowly bringing in this concept. So people misunderstand that remark because they think that these bodies are successive and do not realize that we possess both of them even now. So when we are alive physically also, we have both the physical body as well as the spiritual body. Spiritual body is nothing but the astral body. So when we sleep during the night, so we get into this astral world, and mostly most of us are in a bubble. When we are in a bubble in an astral world, what happens? So we experience, we have some dreams, but during the night. But when we are awake, since we are in a bubble, that dream is not with full clarity. We vaguely remember a few things, but we do not completely remember what we have gone through in the dreams. So that is nothing but we are leaving our physical body when we are sleeping, and we get into that astral or the spiritual body. Some of us are in a bubble, but some of us are open. Open in the sense we can clearly, some of them have gained that consciousness level where they can, whatever they have seen in the dream, they can clearly remember. Whatever they have the communication with somebody in that astral plane, they clearly remember and they can see those things clearly, even though they are in this physical body. Some of them have attained that consciousness, kind of consciousness. Some of us are not. Some of us are still in the bubble. So even though we get into that astral plane, so we vaguely remember. We remember a few things. So that is what he's telling. We daily die. Even we, when we are asleep, when we are in deep sleep, deep unconscious state. So we are daily dying, and we are again coming back to life in the morning when we wake up. So that is what he's telling. So he's telling sleep is a kind of a temporary death. So as you are dying temporarily daily, you have lost a friend permanently, his body, but he is there in this astral plane. So if you really desire, you can communicate with them. So he's getting into that concept. The only difference between the communication when the person is alive with us and the person has passed away is when the person is alive with us, we communicate with him during the day. It's very easy. We are awake, they are awake. We can communicate with each other. That is how we are used to. But the same communication can happen, but when the person passes away, it happens in the night when we are asleep, because the person who has passed away is in the astral plane. So when a person who is alive goes to the astral plane in his sleep, so the communication happens in the night. So that is the only difference. So when he's alive, we speak in the day. When somebody passes away, we can still communicate, but that happens during the night in the astral plane. When both of us are in the same level, two different levels cannot match, right? So when we have to communicate with somebody in the astral plane, so we have to go to that astral plane. Because they are no more, they cannot come. They are not in the physical plane. They are astral. So if we have to communicate, we have to go to the astral. So that is what he's saying. So that is how he ends. Sleep then may be described as a kind of a temporary death. The difference being that you do not withdraw yourself so entirely that your overcoat from your overcoat as to be unable to resume it. It follows that when you sleep, you enter the same condition as that into which your beloved has passed. What that condition is now, I'll proceed to explain. So it says that many theories have been current as to the life after death, most of them based upon the misunderstanding of the ancient scriptures. So he goes on to tell about the various misunderstandings. It talks about talks about different religions, the different beliefs, the things that we have misconceptions around that. So the truth is that the day of blind belief is the past. The era of scientific knowledge is with us, and we can no longer accept ideas unsustained by reason and common sense. So there is no reason why scientific methods should not be applied to the elucidation of problems which in earlier days were left entirely to religion. So he says that the Theosophical Society and the Society of Cyclical Research does this, tries to give this kind of an understanding of what life is after death. So he says that we are the spirits, but we live in the material world. I think this part is for the theosophical background. Anybody who has in the theosophical background can easily get this point. So we are spirits, but we live in the material world. The world, however, which is only partially known to us, all the information that we have about us comes through our senses, but these senses are seriously imperfect. Solid objects we can see, but we can usually see liquids unless they are perfectly clear, but gases are in most cases invisible to us. So research shows that there are other kind of matter far finer than the gases, and that we call it as etheric ether. We call it as ether. That is much beyond your solid, liquid, or gases. So now he is getting more technical, more scientific. So he says that in the physical world, we all know what is solid, liquid, gas. Solid, we can easily perceive. Liquids, yes, we can see, we can feel, we can taste. Some of the gases, yes, we can feel them, we can sense them, but most of the gases, we still cannot feel them. For example, the oxygen, we feel that when we are breathing. When there is lack of oxygen, we feel it. But along with oxygen, there is nitrogen. So will we feel the nitrogen? Can we smell? Can we taste? Can we feel? No. So when our senses are unable to understand some of the things that there is so much research going on solid liquid gases, and there is a periodic table, etc. We know so much about that, but still we cannot feel that because our senses are so limited. So beyond this, there are so many other things. So matters that are finer than gases, matters that are lighter, finer than the gases, which our senses are not able to understand. So when a man dies, so he gets into these kind of finer matter, which our senses cannot perceive. That is the reason we cannot see them. The body is lost, but is still alive. The person is still there, but is in different form, which our senses cannot perceive. So that is what is trying to say. The line of research to which I am referring to has already yielded many marvelous results, and it is opening before us new vistas every day. This information may be gleaned from the theosophical literature, but we are here concerned with only one part of it, with the new knowledge that it puts before us as to the life beyond what we call death and the condition of those who are enjoying it. So in the first part, he tells this and he concludes. So it's mainly is telling that it's not the body. Man is not just the body. So man is the soul, and he has briefly introduced the concept of the physical body and the spiritual body. Where is the spiritual body? Spiritual body is at the finer level, where our senses cannot perceive. So this is the kind of slowly taking much deeper. So next he gets into the other aspect called death is not the end of life. So the first thing that we have to learn is death is not the end of life, as we ignorantly assume, but it is only a step from one stage of life to another. The physical body, I have already said that it is laying aside of the overcoat, but that after it, the man still finds himself clad in this ordinary house coat, the spiritual body. So here he goes on to tell that the death is not the end of life. So what happens after death? So what is the spiritual body? He gave an introduction to the spiritual body. So he goes a level deeper on what exactly is the spiritual body, or what is the astral. Spiritual body is nothing but the astral. What happens in the astral? So what happens to the people who have passed away? So I'll just read out one or two paragraphs which are important. Then I'll get into this. So the first point is to realize that those whom we call death have not left us. So we have been brought up in a complex belief, which implies that every death is separate and marvelous miracle. That when the soul leaves the body, it somehow vanishes into the heaven beyond the stars, etc. So that is not the case. So it says nature's processes are assuredly wonderful and often to us incomprehensible, but they never fly in the face of reason and common sense. So when you take off your overcoat in the hall, you do not suddenly vanish. So precisely in the same way, when the man puts off his physical body, he remains exactly where he was before. It is true that you no longer see him, but the reason for that is not that he has gone away, but the body which he is now wearing is not visible to the physical eyes. So this is what I was saying earlier. So you may be aware that your eyes respond only to a very small proportion of vibrations which exist in nature. And consequently, the only substances which we see are those which happen to reflect this particular undulation. So we all know that electromagnetic spectrum. In that vast electromagnetic spectrum, what we can see is the visible light. The visible light range is very less, right? Beyond that, there are many other electromagnetic waves. There are ultrasonic, X-rays on one side, alpha, beta. There are so many radio waves, high frequency, low amplitude. So there are a lot of other things, but all that we cannot see. What we can see is only the visible light portion of the spectrum. because that is the limitation of our senses. So again, it's talking about the same thing. We cannot say that other person because our senses cannot perceive it. But that doesn't mean that person is not there. He's still there, because astral is nothing but, it is also a body. Astral also is a body which we cannot sense. It also goes through what is the other name of astral body? It's also called the emotional plane. So as we have emotional in the physical sense, astral also has it's the same. It's physical and astral is not much different. It's not much actually different, but they're at a finer level. The matter here in the physical body is more denser. As we go higher, it is more lighter. So that is what he says. So unfortunately, for most of us, there is a break between this physical consciousness and the consciousness of the spiritual body. So that although in the latter we can perfectly remember the former, most of us find it impossible to bring through into walking life the memory of what the soul does when it is away from the body in sleep. If this memory were perfect for us, there would indeed be no death. So men have already attained this continuous consciousness, and all may attain it by degrees, for it is a part of the natural unfolding of the powers of the soul. So, but while we are yet only a few possess full insight and full memory, there are many who have been able to feel the presence of their loved ones, even though they cannot see. And there are uh, others who thought they have no definite memory, wake up slumber into the sense of peace and blessedness, which is the result of what has happened in that higher world. Remember always that this is the lower world and that is the higher. This is nothing but the physical, that is nothing but the astral. Higher is nothing but the astral dimension. And that the greater in this case includes the less. In that consciousness, you remember perfectly what has happened in this. In that consciousness means in the astral, they can see everything. The person who passed away can see us. They can see everything. They can also feel. So suppose if we are happy, they can feel that we are happy, but they may not know the reason why we are happy. If we are sad, they can see that we are sad, but they don't know the reason why we are sad, because it is just the feelings. And astral plane is full of feelings, full of emotions. So that is the relation. So if we are happy, they can see us, but we cannot see them. We can see them only in the night, as we are telling. Again, it clearly tells it. You give the examples of how we can communicate in the night. I think I'll cover it in the next part, I think. So it is all emotions. So what happens when we are mourning? We are very sad. So what happens when we are sad? They know that we are sad, and that is pulling them back. That is not allowing the progress of the soul further. That is why it is important not to mourn and not to keep attached to themselves. Oh, I've lost him. I've lost him. I lost him. I think we have all seen people who might have lost somebody 4 5 years or 10 years back, but they still hold on to that attachment. People who are alive, I'm saying, people who are alive, they still keep thinking them, they still keep talking about them so much, and they feel sad that that actually that doesn't allow the soul to progress, because they're seeing us and they're feeling that is attachment, right? And astral plane is full of attachment, and they see that, okay, they are feeling that we are sad, but they don't know why we are sad, so they cannot do anything. But if you really wish, there are ways, as I said, and in this pamphlet also is given the example. If you really wish to communicate to somebody who has already passed away, just before you sleep, in your mind, be clear of what you want to communicate, and then you sleep. So when you get into the astral plane, that communication goes to them. That what you wanted, what you intended to communicate, and the reverse can also happen, provided you have acquired that kind of a consciousness. Otherwise, it will be just vague. As I said, we are in a bubble. It will be just vague. But if they want, that is a way in which we can quickly release them, quickly release that attachment so that they can progress higher. So mourning, this is the side effect. This is the direct impact of mourning. The more we mourn, the more we affect there. affect their journey forward. And it is not that there is a concept of hell or heaven. As we all know, in the astral plane, there are again 7 subplanes, and the lower 3. When you see in 7 subplanes, you can see as 7 concentric circles, and the lower 3. And the first one, the 7th one, means from the bottom. The first one, if you see, that is more of high, what you say, high violence, anger, selfishness. It's that kind of an emotion-filled person. So if a person has led a life which has been highly selfish or highly violent or highly anger, those kind of things, when he was physically there, physically alive, so he is bound to spend more time in that subplane of the astral plane. And until that energy in that plane goes off completely, so then he'll progress to the next. Suppose the first one is the 7th, so he'll move on to the 6th. So what is the 6th? It is a very deep attachment, deep love, deep care. So that kind of a thing. So when we're physically or emotionally attached to the other person, when we are alive, when we are deeply connected, very physically, mentally, emotionally attached to somebody, so we are bound to spend more time on the 6th, on the second, on the other subplane. So at that, when a person is, suppose when a person is that subplane, so whatever emotions that we show when we are alive here, that they can clearly perceive that, because again that is just the emotion. So the more we mourn, the more we make that person stay in that subplane there. And the next 2 planes are it's kind of progressing to a higher levels from the lower. Means it's not pulling you down, but the moment you pass the first 2 subplanes, it is more of looking forward. You can say it is like a preparatory stage of an heaven, whatever. Suppose I take common example is the drunkard. So people who are alcoholic here during the physical life, they have the body here, so they were fulfilling their desires there. So they have passed away and they get into that planes where there is no body there. So they don't need the money, they don't need food, they don't need shelter. So because they are out of this body. So there is no body, but there is strong desire of alcohol. So what do? There is no body to enjoy that. Suppose a person who is highly ambitious, a person who is highly greedy, or a person who is whatever it is, all that is fulfilled to the body here in the physical. But when we get into that plane, there is no body. They don't need the money, food, shelter, nothing. But that desire holds them back. Until that desire should go away, until the desire for that alcoholism should go away naturally at that level. Until then, they have to spend time there. There is no other way. But we have a chance in the physical body. If we have to get rid of alcohol, the only way to get rid of alcohol is to get rid of alcohol. So we have a chance here. If we live a life in a way it has to be lived, so we will end up spending lesser time there. Otherwise, we are bound to spend more time there. So that is what is the thing. The next 2 level, it's like if I have to give a direct example, it's like a retired life. So when we are active, when we are physically, when we are in active life, we go, we work, we have a goals, ambitions, we have competition, we compare, we learn, we do a lot of things. But as soon as we're retired, we don't know what to do. We don't know. We think that we have already achieved, what we want to do, what we had to, but going ahead, we don't know what to do. So the next 2 planes are like that. So you have passed the first 2 stages, but you don't know what to do next. So the soul should get prepared. It purify, or it needs to add some ingredients. All that purification, or what do you say, transformation, all those things happen next to it. The 2 planes, subplanes are almost similar. So you end up spending more time there. But you can avoid all this if you are intelligent enough, if you're intellectual enough, or at a conscious level or higher, you can use up that time you spend there to grasp as much as power and be progress ahead. So that is a different thing. And there's other thing, as I said, the person who is attached may end up spending the time in that lower 2-3 planes. But a person who has led a life in a higher conscious or led a life in a way it has to be lived, so he can directly bypass all these things. He may need not spend all this time in this subplane, right? After death, there are many possibilities. After death, if a person has lived a right kind of life, he can bypass the astral plane in few hours, few months, or few years. That is one possibility, provided how we lead our life here. The other aspect is if we have not lived a correct life, so what happens? We end up living 300, 400, 500 years, we don't know. So until that all that energy naturally subdues, and slowly we go ahead and go into the higher planes. So that is here he mainly talks about the astral. So beyond astral, we all know there are planes of much more purity, planes which are much more heavenly. Astral, the last 2 or 3, we can call it as a pre-preparation stage of in heaven. But beyond that, we call Devachan, and those are even higher principles, higher energy, finer matter. So that is what he is trying to tell here. So at the same time, you wish to consult him as little as possible. So that is what he's telling. The last 2 paragraphs, I'll quickly read. I think it's already 11:20. So sometimes you wish to consult him at some point, and here break between the two forms of consciousness usually prevents you from bringing back a clear answer. Yet, even if you cannot bring back a definite recollection, you will often wake up with a strong impression as to his wish or his decision. Again, he's talking about those dreams, that communications, or what is happening. And then the third subtopic, what he talks about is the life of the departed. So once a man leaves here, what happens? I think I have covered most part of it. So I've said about the subplanes and what happens to the person who has passed away and how he ends up spending time. And he's given examples of artists, he's given example of musicians, and he also tells that after death, the life there, the life beyond death is much more beautiful, much more wonderful than what we see here in the earth, what we see here in the physical body. So people who are alive should realize this. So there is ample opportunity because there is no body. That restriction is not there, right? They want to do whatever they want to do. There is no restriction. No need of food, shelter, money, nothing. Here in the physical level, everything is an a constraint. The body is a constraint, and he needs to work. He needs to earn money. He needs to feed so many people who are dependent on him. He needs to find shelter. So there is nothing of this in the astral plane. So he's free to do what he wants. So what he wants to learn, he can quickly learn there, provided we allow them to learn. If we hold them back, so we are allowing their progress to reduce, right? So that is what he tells in this part of the story. So that world is much more beautiful, provided how we use that opportunity there. Once it's like what we are interested, we can definitely go on to learn music, artists, and he says that it will help people who have lived a life without much desire, without much attachment. When they pass away, they actually enjoy this journey in the astral plane much more. They enjoy it much more because they're free to learn what they want to, and the soul gets enhanced, enriched, refreshed, refined, purified, and it goes further up. So it is more of when he starts speaking about life after death. I personally feel that is more telling about how you have to live a life when you're alive, so that your journey going ahead becomes simple. Going ahead becomes much more simpler, much more enjoyable, right? And it is nothing like hell or heaven. Hell is nothing but, as I said, that example of a drunkard, right? He does not have a body, but he has to face that situation. That desire should naturally go away. Until that, there is no other way, but he has to spend time there. So that itself is a hell, right? That itself is a kind of an hell kind of a thing. That's it. So beyond that, again, even that person, when he goes higher, he'll start enjoying. He'll start doing what he wants to do. So it is much more pleasurable, much more enjoyable than what we think here. The more we mourn, the more we hold them back. So that is what he's trying to tell in this entire section. And he gives many examples. I'm not purposely, I'm not going because it's deep. It's 15-page thing, but it talks about all these things. Whatever he has said itself, I'm summarizing. I'm not telling anything out of my own. Most of the examples that I've given are here. I recommend everyone to read this one. It's just 15 pages. You need around 45 minutes or 1 hour. So when you read this, you will get much more clear clarity of what I'm just saying, because nothing out of this I'm telling. So that is one section. And then he goes on to do the dead see us. Do the dead people see us? Again, this part I have briefly covered. Yes, they can see us. Because they're at higher level and they can see us, but we cannot see them. We can see them only at the night. That part is very clear, and that also is given here. There's examples are given here. And as I said, they can see us. If they see us happy, so they are happy. It is directly proper. It is like direct feelings. Feelings are same here and same in the astral. So if we are sad, they can know that we are sad, but they don't know the reason behind that. And because of that, they get stuck. So it's not that they cannot see something. Again, here they gave a lot of examples. So sometimes what happens to parents who have passed away, but left behind small children. What happens? What kind of a mindset they might have? So it's important for people who are living here to take care of those children, whoever it may be, relatives, friends, etc. Because that emotion, that my child, I have left behind my child, somebody has to take care. The child is taken care, the progress is easier. The child is not taken care, then that emotion get attached and he has to stay for a much longer time. So those kind of things are given. So what happens when a child dies? Small children die, what happens? So it says nothing to worry. Small children die. There are a lot of mothers there who have lost their child, so they are there to take care. So they will guide the children. And usually children, because they're not emotionally attached, they don't have so much of desire. So what happens, their journey in the astral plane is for a very, very short period of time. So they come back very quickly because they're not attached too much. So they pass through the astral plane quickly. And most often, they might again come back to the same parents. Suppose a young child who passed away, children who passed away, there may be a possibility that they again may come back as a child for the same parent. There are cases. That's what he's telling. So, do the dead seers? Yes, of course. There are a lot of instances that there are a lot of things that he has given. I'll just read you paragraph. So truly there is no hell, yet it will be seen that a drunkard or a sensuous who is prepared for himself something which is no bad imitation thereof. So only in it, not everlasting. It endures only until his desires have worn themselves out. He can at any moment put a period to it if he is strong enough and wise enough to dominate those earthly cravings and to raise himself entirely above them. This is the truth underlying the Catholic doctrine of purgatory. They call it as purgatory in Christianity. The idea of that after death, the evil qualities have to be burdened out of a man by a certain amount of suffering before he is capable of enjoying the bliss of the heaven. So this is what I was telling. Until that energy in that subplane, it has to naturally subdue. Until that naturally subdues, there is no other way. We have to spend that time. But if we are wise enough, so we can set a time to it and we can come out of it quicker. That is what he's saying. And then he talks about the greater life of man. Again, he's telling in this entire thing, I'll just read two paragraphs. So if a dead man was during life being thought foolish and blasphemous religious doctrines, he sometimes suffers from anxiety with regard to its own future fate. Fortunately, there are in the spiritual world who may make it their business to find men who are under such a delusion as this and to set them free from it by a rational explanation of facts. Not only are there dead men who do this, but there are also many living men who devote their time during the sleep of the body each night to the service of the dead, endeavoring to relieve people from nervousness or suffering by explaining to them the truth in all its beauty. All suffering comes from ignorance. Dispel the ignorance, and the suffering is gone. So he's telling nothing to worry. There will be anxiety, there will be fear, because whatever the thoughts can get to form there. It's very easy. Suppose a person is very ambitious. Suppose a person is very spiritual. A person may, while he is in his body, may have a very large ambition of building a church or building a temple. In the astral plane, that takes form very easily, because these emotions are nothing but energies, and it can take form there very easily. So they might end up doing much more productive work there. But on the other side, there are anxieties, there are fears. So in that cases, there are people who are there to help us, telling us, explaining us these facts, that this is this, this is this, and they can go ahead. Not only people who are dead can do that, but people who are alive also can do the same thing. So when we are alive, so we can also work for the dead. We can also work to get them liberated. When again the same process. When we sleep, we get into that astral plane. So when we get into that astral plane, we can work to get rid of this. We can help them get rid of this anxiety when we are alive also. And there are many people who are doing this, but it's not possible for everybody. But if we work towards it, definitely it's possible. So that's what he says. So next he talks about what happens when a child dies. In brief, I have said what happens when a child dies. So it's the same thing what is given here. And he also talks about what about spiritualism? There are few cases of black magic where somebody dies, and there are a few rituals, a few processes where they again bring back that soul and bring back that person to life. But that is all complicated, and that all leads to lots and lots of problems. Sometimes people attempt all this and get stuck. They're neither in the physical nor in the astral. They get stuck, and it's like screwed up. They're neither here nor there, and they end up spending more time in the astral plane. And he suggests never attempt to do all those things. So it's a very small paragraph, about one paragraph. He talks about this, and this is the same thing what he is telling. So it tells not to worry about all these things, just forget, and don't spend too much time to understand all these things also, because it's not so useful. It will get it more than it's useful. It brings more trouble to you. So it says just avoid. So he gets into the last topic. So in summary, so what is all this? To those who mourn, he talks about so many things. In summary, so what he says is, so man is not just the body, he is the soul. And the first, he has talked about the physical body, the spiritual body, and what are the various levels of the astral plane, and how our attachments to them, and how our mourning, our sadness with respect to them, the more we hold them back, the more we are sad because of thinking about them. Because we are so much dependent on them, we are not ready to leave them, even after many years, after they have passed away. So all that leads to slows down their progress. So all this, if you understand, one thing definitely, I cannot say we will not mourn. So we will mourn, but it will be a much smaller time. So when we understand this entire journey, so we will naturally work towards freeing them, and also going beyond. We should also go beyond, right? We have lost a person. That's an opportunity for us to learn what that person was doing for us, right? We have to progress. So it's no more dependent. So you have to go alone. You have all the capacity to do that. So do that. Learn, do that. You progress, and also you allow them to progress. That is one aspect. The other clear aspect and other most important aspect that I feel out of the takeaway of all this is, if you understand death, you will start living in the way it has, in the way we have to live. That is a very important point. So we have to live in a way we have to live, because our journey further should become quicker. It has to become faster, or it has to become more worthwhile. The time we spend in the astral plane should become more worthwhile for our soul to acquire, to get purified more, to acquire what knowledge we want, and to progress ahead. So that is the whole intention. I think that is when we understand this, the fear about death naturally goes down. Otherwise, we are caught up with all these blind beliefs of religion, and we get stuck, and we create problems for us, and also we create problems for those who have passed away. I think, yeah, I think this is how I want to just summarize. I urge everybody to read this. It's wonderful. Just 15 pages. And you can also pass it on to people who do not know about this, because we cannot tell them when they lose somebody, but we can prepare anybody, right? We can prepare anybody to face this situation. But when somebody passes away, and when we go and talk about all this astral, all this dreams, nobody will be ready to listen to us, right? So it's always better to prepare everybody, take everybody along with us. That's the best possibility, because that helps not only the person who's alive, as I said. Yeah, with that, I would like to conclude. I have taken 2 more minutes, but anyway, any questions I would like to take? I hope I made it clear.
That was really nice and very, very thoughtful. In fact, this point of to those who mourn is a very bit sensitive topic for many of us, because
Yeah.
at least for the last 2 years of the pandemic phases, we have also lost all our near and dear ones. And correctly in this time of the lunar cycle, where even HPB mentions about few points where you can actually establish the contact with the lunar pitras and the Barhishat pitras. So this is also one such moment. The Pitru Paksha, which we call, is also actually one of the timelines where we can have those contacts with those who have deceased or left the bodies. And so keeping all this in mind is how everything has fallen its place in sync with for to those who mourn. One last quote, which I would like to quote as a moderator for the day, is, if I could, is, if it is probable that they may be feeling some anxiety about us, let us be persistently cheerful, that we may assure them that they have no need to feel troubled on our account. If during physical life they have been without detailed and accurate information as to the life after death, let us endeavor at once to assimilate such information ourselves and to pass it on in our nightly conversations with them. Since our thoughts and feelings are so readily mirrored in theirs, let us see to it that those thoughts and feelings are always elevating and encouraging. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. So basically, now that the power to uh, to educate them on this life after death is also resting on us. And with theosophists who can think beyond the physical realms of life, I think it's easier for us. But for that, first, we need to know what it is. And like what Varun has explained, that's what we are supposed to do. So we first need to know about it. And for more details, please read the literature on life after death and the astral, mental, and the causal bodies, because they deal about it, about post-death experiences later on. So with that, I leave it to the floor. Any questions, comments, anyone? Rekha ji, Narendra ji, Dr. Sushma, any comments, questions?
I went pretty fast. When I started reading that, I thought it might have been 2 sessions, because we could have gone it in detail. But was it clear to everybody? No, at least the message part of it. At least this.
For me, it is perfectly clear.
Okay. Good.
And one more clear is
It
that I need to
was-
read more.
I think it is
Yes.
so clear to everybody that nobody has any question left with them. So that is why everybody is silent now.
Oh, that's lovely. So then, since we are also running short of time, I think we will conclude the session with a prayer. And before that, thank you all for having this session and coming to this session. Because of the technical glitch, we couldn't send you with that invite. And thanks for joining us in the new invite, all of you. So big thanks for Kritika ji and Subralina ji for the session, for helping us out. So with this, I'll have a closing prayer and we can conclude after that. Please close your eyes. Oh. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु. Thank you all. Thank you for a wonderful time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Varunji.
Thank you.
Thank you.